Hello, YouTube audience. Welcome back to Movies I Watched in 2025, the fun, family-oriented series that never ends. This month, we're talking about March. And oh boy, man, I love March. If I were to rank all of the months, I would put March in 11th place. This time around, I have some movies to talk about, just like all the other times. And yeah, that's pretty much it, yeah. So let's just stop all of the teasing and march over to the movies. You see what I did there? I said March, but I used it in a different way. The first movie I watched in March is Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. I watched the first Hellraiser movie last year, and it was pretty good. It was like a giant gore fest with a lot of interesting themes about pleasure and pain, unsavory desires, and kind of like Nosferatu, adultery. It's really good, and it kind of has this really unsettling vibe to the whole thing. By the end, it makes you feel really icky. It's a very effective horror movie. And it's a really good horror movie. So good, in fact, that they shouldn't have made any sequels. But Hollywood, they love money. So as soon as that movie was successful, they said, we're making another one. And literally a year later, Hellbound Hellraiser 2 came out. The first Hellraiser was about a stepmom who cheated on her husband with the husband's brother. And the husband's brother happened to get this magical box. And he unlocks this box because apparently if you do, you get otherworldly pleasures or something. But then when he unlocks the box, these demons called Cenobites come out of nowhere and take him to hell. But then he escapes the Cenobites and comes back as a skinless monster. He convinces the stepmom, Julia, to kill men and bring him to him so that he can feed off of them and get his skin back. So obviously, it's a huge metaphor for a wife who cheated on her husband and then wanted to relive, the feeling of cheating again.
Julia, that bitch.
And you get to see how it affects the family, specifically the daughter, Kirsty. There's a great scene where Kirsty is in the hospital and she's, messing around with the box. And while she's doing that, there's footage of roses deflowering, on the TV behind her. Very subtle symbolism. Now with Hellraiser 2, but this movie takes place directly after the last one.
Welcome back.
Kirsty is back, and she's in a mental asylum after the events of the first movie. And of course, since the events of the last movie were so fucked and involved demons called Cenobites, no one believes her, and everyone thinks she's crazy. But unfortunately, and also coincidentally, the owner of this mental asylum that she's in knows all about these Cenobites. He knows about the Cenobites, he knows about these otherworldly pleasures, and he knows about the box. More specifically, the boxes. There's multiple boxes now. And then he tries to do some things to bring back the girl from the first movie, Julia. Yeah, the gore in this movie is pretty fucked. But eventually, all of our main characters, they wind up in hell. And that's when the movie is awesome. Overall, the directing of this movie is pretty great. I love the look of it, specifically the look of hell. It's really fucking weird and crazy. It's all like a giant fever dream almost, to the point where it reminds me a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street, to the point where I went to the director's filmography just to see if he made a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. He didn't, but he did make the 2018 hit, A Doggone Adventure. Anyway, this movie, it's kind of all over the place. The directing is pretty great. The gore is pretty nuts, and the acting overall is pretty decent. But the story is just like really weird. I don't know why they decided to continue the story of the last movie and like bring back Kirsty and all of that, because it just makes the plot like kind of nonsensical and really coincidental. Like right after Kirsty goes through this whole thing with demons in the box, she just happens to run into a guy who knows all about that stuff and wants to do that stuff for himself. And also, the movie is definitely not as focused as the last movie was. The last movie was clearly about, like, cheating and explores concepts of pleasure and pain, showing that the line between them could get really blurry. And I guess what this movie attempted to do was to explain how that line could get blurry. There's a mute girl in the movie, and she's, like, obsessed with puzzles. And she's the one that solves the box for everyone in the movie to go to hell. And then later on in the movie, there's other mental patients who are trying to solve their own boxes. It kind of frames it in a way that, like, the box represents the mind and how the mind can be a giant puzzle, and when you're in a lot of mental anguish, the puzzle pieces are all scrambled or something. But that doesn't really fit with the last movie, where the box kind of represented, in my opinion, like a sin or like a fetish or something sexual. But I guess what the box represents in this movie is completely different, because who cares? There's a scene later on in the movie, spoiler alert, if you care about Hellbound, Hellraiser 2 for some reason, where Kirsty talks to the Cenobites and tells them that you guys aren't evil, you guys are just confused. You guys were humans once.
And it's you!
Nonsense.
It's you! You haven't always been this way. You were human. Remember.
Wait. I remember.
And even though that's kind of weird and a bit ham-fisted, I kind of liked that, actually. Kind of adds a little bit of a heartwarming little ending for those Cenobites. Even though it's very similar to, like, how Steven Universe solves his problems. But yeah, Hellraiser 2, Hellbound, whatever the fuck this movie's called. It's very weird. Very weird. There's like two different ways you can look at this movie. You can look at it as a pretty bad sequel to Hellraiser, or you could look at it as a pretty decent horror movie from the 80s. And I choose to look at it in the second way, because I love horror movies, and I love seeing an immense amount of gore. So I'm going to give the movie a 7 out of 10. It's definitely closer to a 6 than an 8, obviously, but it was okay. It was fine. Check it out if you want to see a weird demon fat guy floating around. The next movie I watched in March is a classic, a horror classic. I'm talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, obviously, this is not the first time that I've seen this movie. I've seen it many times. Many times. The first time I watched it, I think I watched it in late middle school, early high school. And I definitely liked it, but I don't think I enjoyed it as much as, like, a Friday the 13th movie, which is a really unfair comparison, but it was a comparison that was in my mind when watching it for the first time. The reason why is because people always call this like a slasher movie. They call it the most influential slasher movie. But this movie is not a slasher movie, in my opinion. Your typical slasher movie usually focuses more on the kills. The kills are usually the main attraction to those things. But this movie doesn't care about the kills. The kills don't matter. What matters is the terrible immersive experience that this movie puts the audience through. It starts with a message, kind of framing the movie as a real story, or like a very realistic story or something based off of true events. And the rest of the movie really commits to that. The first 30 to 40 minutes of this movie are with our main characters, a bunch of young adults on a road trip. And all of the characters in this movie feel very realistic. Like, they all feel like real people that I could run into at, like, a job or, like, the store or something.
Franklin, you maniac, tearing up the van.
Yeah, I just started doing that.
There's a character, like, reading horoscopes and, like, astrology and shit.
Oh no. Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. There are moments when we cannot believe that what is happening is really true. Pinch yourself and you may find out that it is.
And there's also the wheelchair guy who feels like the most real in the whole movie. They're all very good, and every single time I rewatch this movie, I feel like I appreciate the first 30 minutes more and more. Getting to hang out with these characters before they're all brutally killed is like really bittersweet, because they are all very likable. And what they're doing, going on a road trip, is a fun activity that a lot of people like to do. And then after the 30-minute mark, a big fat guy in a weird mask goes around and kills a bunch of people. And it is crazy. And the rest of the movie continues this craziness, being an onslaught of horrifying shit, to gross shit, to unsettling shit, to chicken shit. The whole movie looks really fucking gross. It's probably one of the most nastiest movies to lay your eyes upon. And it's perfect. It's perfect. It's like I'm not even there, but I feel like I need to take 12 showers. Not to mention the soundtrack, which is like a bunch of ambient, like horror noises. And then there's also the camera work in the movie that's really great. It kind of makes the movie feel like a nature documentary. And that's the thing. I feel like if this movie is trying to say anything, it's trying to say that humans are animals. In the beginning of the movie, the main characters start talking about like animal slaughterhouses and how they killed like cows and shit.
Hey, we got an uncle that works at one of those places outside of Fort Worth. Hey, you see those buildings there? That's where they kill them. They bash them in the head with a big sledgehammer.
Oh, that's awful.
And of course, as the movie goes on, all of our characters get killed like cattle. It's like the movie is subconsciously brainwashing you into looking at all of the characters like animals, which fits with like what the main character is probably thinking throughout all of this. Throughout a lot of the scenes, there's like a lot of pig noises and animal noises going on in the background. Which to me just feels like, a constant reminder of that fact that humans are animals and anyone could be slaughtered like an animal. It's a horrifying thought and a horrifying reality. And I imagine like what 70s audiences thought about this when it came out. Because I feel like a lot of horror movies before the 70s were like mostly stuff to do with monsters and ghosts. And then after this movie, I feel like all horror movies were trying to be like, you know what the scariest thing is? A guy in a mask going around killing people. Because that could happen. That could happen to you. You can die by a guy in a mask. It happens to the best of us. I couldn't imagine what these characters went through. Like the main character, she jumps through like 2 different windows. Like that's fucking nuts. What is this? Friday the 13th Part 4? So yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's great. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10.
Come on, Franklin. It's gonna be a fun trip. If I have any more fun today, I don't think I'm gonna be able to take it.
The next movie I watched in March is Roadgames. And this movie is fantastic. This movie feels like it should be a classic. And I'm sure it's already a cult classic, but this movie definitely deserves more recognition. It has everything you want from a movie, great characters, really sincere comedy.
Now there's a man with balls.
A really captivating story, and a lot of heart. This movie is all about a truck driver named Quid.
Darling, just because I drive a truck does not make me a truck driver.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's not a truck driver. He just drives trucks.
We are truckers, Boswell, and from now on we're gonna truck. And I don't want to hear another word about it.
Oh, my apologies. He actually is a truck driver. Anyway, Quid is a really eccentric truck driver with a very vivid imagination, and while he's on the road, he witnesses some suspicious activity, and then he hears on the radio that there's a serial killer going around Australia killing hitchhikers. This movie, it takes place in Australia. It's the Down Under with the kangaroos. And basically all of this gets him to think that the man that he encountered in the beginning of the movie was a serial killer, the guy in the green van. And as the movie goes on, Quid has to basically debate with himself whether what he witnessed was proof that he's a serial killer or if Quid is just crazy. And it's fantastic. This main character, Quid, he really carries this movie. He is such a likable character, and because the first time you see him, he's like alone, you feel like you know him more than everyone else in the movie. The only person Quid has to talk to is his pet dingo, which is awesome.
Okay, Buzzy. It's you and me, pal. Now listen. No snoring and no evil smells.
But as the movie goes on, Quid runs into a wide array of characters, and all of them really don't care much about the serial killer. But then he also runs into Jamie Lee Curtis.
Set the record straight. Do you have a penis or not?
And she's like the only one who actually cares and pays attention to his theories. And they have a little romantic thing going on in the movie. It's great. It's great. You know, it's a classic. It actually reminded me a lot of a Hitchcock movie, specifically Rear Window. Rear Window being like a great movie about a guy who's sitting looking out his window and he sees something going down across the street. Then everyone else, they're like, what are you talking about? We didn't see that, so how do we know that that's the truth? And it's kind of funny that I mentioned Hitchcock because the director of this movie also made Psycho 2. And if you guys have never seen Psycho 2, go watch that movie. Especially if you've already seen the original Psycho.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Psycho 2 is a fantastic sequel, and it's crazy that it is because it came out like 20 years after the original Psycho. It's an 80s movie, and it's fucking great. But just like your Hitchcock film, you know, Roadgames, it truly does feel classic. And I feel like if this movie is about anything, you know, it's about the dangers of loneliness. You know, Quid, he's on the road by himself for most of the time, and because of that, he has to kind of cope with that by kind of playing around with his mind a little bit, you know, playing road games. That's the title of the movie. He has a very vivid imagination, so, as he's going around and he's like kind of talking to himself, talking to his dingo, and he sees this serial killer plot going on, you know, he doesn't know whether what he's seen is real or if it's just all in his own head. And you as an audience also doesn't really know what is real and what's not. And that's the genius thing about this movie. Like when I watched it, I was second guessing Quid all the way up to the end. And not only that, like even if he was correct about this serial killer thing, he could easily get fucking gaslighted by whoever the fuck this killer is. And that fits in with the themes of loneliness. You know, if Quid was never alone, then he would have, had someone to, like, kind of talk to and ask, what their opinion of this situation was. But because he just can't tell whether, he should really be doing something about this or if he should just keep driving. There's a lot of really great scenes near the end. Like, I think the last act of this movie is probably my favorite. There's a great scene where he's driving on the road and he's like debating with himself while driving. There's a great shot of like the road, crossfaded over his face, and then the lines of the road like start crossing with each other to kind of show just how jumbled up his mind is. It's fantastic. This movie is really well directed, really well written, and really well acted. And there's not really much else to say. I mean, this movie is fantastic. Everyone should check it out. It's awesome. And I would give it a 9 out of 10.
And no more games.
The next movie that I watched in March is The Changeling. And it's funny because I completely forgot that I watched this until I started making this video, which usually means that the movie is trash, but this movie's not that bad. It's okay. The movie is about a pianist. No, not a penis. A pianist. His name is John Russell, and his family dies in a tragic car accident in the beginning of the movie. And then like a year later, he gets a job teaching a bunch of kids about music, and he moves into a new house. But this house that he moves into is haunted. There's ghosts in here. This is a haunted house movie. And basically, while he's living in this house, you know, he still can't get over the death of his family. Like, he's still sad about it.
John? What's the matter?
I was just thinking about my daughter, Kathy. How much she loved horses.
But then, when he starts finding out there's a ghost in there, his attention is completely averted. And the ghost basically gets him to start looking into the past of, like, this politician. And a lot of the movie is actually more so like a mystery, you know, trying to find out more about this ghost. And it's just okay, you know, this movie, it feels kind of mismarketed, in my opinion. The poster made me think that this was going to be like a cheesy horror movie. But then when you start watching it, and it turns out to be this, like, depressing movie about grief and, like, coping mechanisms, it's just like, I wasn't expecting this. This movie takes patience and attention. Things that I do have, but I was not willing to give it to a movie at the time of watching this. I was trying to sit down and eat my food while watching, like, an enjoyable horror movie. Not watch a movie about an old guy who can't get over his fucking family dying. I do kind of like the message of the movie, or like the overall theme, because if you take out the ghost in this movie, like, the movie is basically just about an old guy who is struggling with getting over the past, so he decides to dig into someone else's past, and I kind of like that. Like, it kind of shows that some people, in order to forget about their own past, they have to start digging into someone else's business. Some people who are unhappy with their lives will try to make you unhappy. And I love that message, you know, it's a good message. It makes my penis hard. No, not my pianist, my penis.
It's so large.
But yeah, I don't really have much to say about this. You know, it's like a horror movie for old people. Like, I can imagine a grandma watching this while she's sipping, like, a glass of wine or something, and the whole time she's watching it, she's, like, completely captivated by it. And when she finishes, she goes to her husband, who's laying in bed. She lays down next to him, and the husband's like, "How did you like your movie, dear?" And then she's like, "Oh yeah, I really liked that. That was really good. It was very scary." The directing is fine, you know, it's nothing to write home about, but it does the job. The soundtrack is okay, the acting is fine. The story is just, like, you know, it's just for old people. This is an old person movie. I'm not old. I'm not fucking old. I'm gonna give this movie a 3 out of 5. It's okay, you know, it's a cool little haunted house movie, I guess. Maybe I'll appreciate it more when I'm older and my family dies in a car crash. Alright, it's Massacre Time. Massacre Time is another Italian movie. This one's made by Lucio Fulci, which is a director that I've seen a few movies of. I've seen Zombie 2, which is pretty awesome. There's a scene in that movie where a zombie fights a shark, and that's pretty much all you need to know about it. I've also seen The Beyond, which is really, really good. It looks awesome. It sounds awesome. There's a lot of really great gore scenes in that movie that are scored with really great music. And Massacre Time, well, you know, it's good. This isn't a Italian horror movie. This is a Italian Western. Now, obviously, when it comes to not only Italian Westerns, but also all Westerns, none of them really compare to the work of Sergio Leone. Fistful of Dollars is amazing. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is, of course, you know, one of those movies. One of those movies that everyone says is the best. And it might very well be the best. But in my opinion, I think Sergio Leone's best work is Once Upon a Time in the West. Every movie is trash compared to that movie. Especially Westerns. Like, there's no Western that is better than Once Upon a Time in the West. Now, this movie came out before Once Upon a Time in the West, and I actually think it came out before The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which makes it pretty interesting. This movie is about Django. No, not Jamie Foxx. The other guy.
What's your name?
Django.
Can you spell it?
D-J-A-N-G-O. The D is silent.
I know.
And basically, it's all about his character. His name is like Tom or some shit. And the movie starts with Tom looking for gold until he gets a note from home telling him he has to come back to his hometown because there's something wrong. So he goes back to his old town and he finds out that his family is in shambles. And all of the land and riches that his family owned are now owned by a different family, an evil family. His brother is a fucking drunk.
Hello, Jeff.
And honestly, he's probably the best character in the movie. He's great.
When are you leaving, Tom?
I just got here.
And as soon as Tom finds out that this is the situation that they're in, he decides that, he's going to try to find out what the fuck happened. And most of this movie is actually him going around this old town, trying to figure out what's going on.
What's going on around here?
And even though it's a Western, it actually feels a lot like a conspiracy thriller. Like, he goes around and he asks people questions, but no one answers them. And then when he gets to a person that might be able to answer his questions, they get, immediately shot. There's a lot of mystery, a lot of intrigue going on. And it has a lot of really great, Western-isms, a lot of really great shots of horses and the West. A lot of really great fight scenes. There's one fight scene in the bar that is pretty great.
I'm thirsty.
It's very fun, very, very entertaining. There's also a lot of great gunfights in this movie. Every time the drunken brother gets into one, he yells, "Hey, gentlemen!"
Hey, gentlemen!
Which is very funny, but at the same time, wouldn't you want the element of surprise to help you out? I don't know, who cares? And yeah, the drunken brother really does carry this movie for me. The Django guy, he's alright, but really all of the interesting stuff going on with him comes later in the movie. For most of this, it's really just him trying to deal with his drunken brother while also trying to find out what the fuck is going on around here. There's also an Asian character, and every time you see him, he starts talking about Confucius.
Confucius say, if you want to live a long life, try to be ignorant and know nothing.
There's also the evil character in this movie, the antagonist, and he's really hamming it up.
You love me, Daddy.
I want to talk to you.
What is it, Daddy? Are we still one?
It almost feels like he belongs in a different movie, like a horror movie or some shit. And I guess, this movie is about the importance of family.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
You gotta have your family around you. Your family is all you got. And there's a really good twist in this movie that kind of goes along with that. And that twist is really good. I bet it makes the movie more interesting when you rewatch it. Overall, though, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good Western. Like I said, it doesn't really compare to, Sergio Leone's Westerns. It's not the greatest thing in the world. There's a lot of really cheap qualities to it. For most of this movie, since it's Django trying to find out what's going on, it feels very aimless in a way.
And there I was in the very middle of the whole situation, not knowing what would happen.
But I think it kind of pulls everything together in the last act, especially with that twist. So I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10.
Whiskey's no good for me.
The next movie that I watched is another Italian movie, but this time it's a bit more in my wheelhouse. It's an Italian horror mystery, a classic giallo from the GOAT himself, Dario Argento, who I talked about a little bit in my January video. The movie I'm talking about is Tenebrae. It's about an author named Peter Neal who releases his own murder mystery book called, get this, Tenebrae. And after it's released, a mysterious killer in Rome starts going around replicating kills from his book on random women. And it's a fantastic idea for a giallo movie like this. It's actually a little bit meta. Did someone say meta?
Meta.
And because of how meta it feels, It feels like Argento put a lot of his own experience into this movie. Like in the movie, people criticize the author on his own work.
Why do you despise women so much?
Sexist? No, I don't think it's sexist.
Women as victims, ciphers, the male heroes with their hairy macho bullshit.
Well, I don't know. Would you like me to tell you that I supported the Equal Rights Amendment?
And a lot of it feels like criticisms that Argento probably received for his movies, which I think is pretty funny. I would actually say that this is probably one of his best movies, definitely up there with like Deep Red. If Deep Red was Argento's masterpiece in the 70s, Tenebrae could very well be his masterpiece of the 80s. I can't say too much about it because I don't want to spoil, who the killer is or anything like that.
And I'm a detective, right?
And you never guess who the murderer is.
Right, never.
But the movie looks amazing. Like, this probably is one of Argento's best looking movies. This and Inferno just has such a fantastic look to it that is really nice on the eyes. It's very slick and kind of cold and stark, which feels like an antithesis of what he was doing in the 70s, which felt a lot more warm and kind of inviting. But the whole movie has like a perfect look to it, which I really love. There's a lot of beautiful cinematography, a lot of beautiful women, and an amazing soundtrack. The soundtrack, of course, being done by Goblin. And this might be some of Goblin's best work. There are so many great tracks in this movie that are just amazing. And fits really well with all of the crazy gore scenes. And there is some fantastic gore in this movie. Some of it feels a little bit over the top, but I kind of love it. This movie does a really good job at keeping you engaged in the story. I really think that one of Argento's strong suits is characters. He does a really good job at crafting really interesting characters. And like characters that you want to root for, and seeing like an author who does his own murder mystery stuff, trying to figure out who a real killer is super fucking entertaining. I kind of wish they did more with that, but I think it's perfect, with the way the story goes. But this movie does a lot of interesting things with the characters. There's one character who's like a young boy in the movie that's helping the author out. And after he witnesses one of the murders in the movie, there's a great scene of him just driving home alone in his car. And he's just like completely distraught of what he just saw. And I really like how this movie blends, reality with fiction and shows that, they are not the same. But it does that in like such a subtle way where it doesn't feel super ham-fisted or in your face or anything. There's a lot of weird, like dreamlike sequences in this movie involving like a woman in red heels. And all of them are like so interesting. And that and also like the reveal of the killer has a really great payoff. The last 15 minutes of this movie are so insane, but in like the best way possible. It's so much fun. It's a little comedic the way this movie ends. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's great. It's fantastic. I really liked all of the themes about, the relationship between art and people, including the creator of that art. All of the kill scenes in the movie are great. They hit every single Argento hallmark, I will say that this is the only Argento giallo where I figured out who the killer was before it was revealed. But I don't think that's too much of a bad thing, it didn't really, ruin the movie for me or anything. Because the core of the story is so entertaining that, it's still good. But yeah, I can't say too much about this movie. I just gotta tell you to watch it, goddammit. And I would say this is a great Argento movie to start off with if you've never seen his movies before. And I would give this movie a 9 out of 10. I think it's great. It's an aesthetic masterpiece. So yeah, check it out. Now.
He says the next victim will be someone he refers to as the Great Corrupter. Well, as a matter of fact, this message is expected to result in several businessmen and politicians leaving the city, yes.
The next movie that I watched in March is another James Bond movie. In the last video, I talked about how I've made it a mission to watch every James Bond movie. Last time I talked about Diamonds Are Forever, which was the last Sean Connery movie in the franchise. Rest in peace. And now it's time to enter the Roger Moore era with Live and Let Die. And this is a very solid James Bond movie. It feels like it's exactly what it needed to be to continue the franchise. It follows the James Bond formula almost to a fault. James Bond, he goes against a big bad guy, and then as he does it, he meets a girl and they have sex, and then James Bond beats the bad guy, and then he has sex with the girl again. Classic. It feels a bit formulaic, honestly, but there's also so much going on in this movie that it's almost trying to distract you from how formulaic it is. There's a lot of weird characters, like 3 different main locations, 3 big chase sequences, voodoo and supernatural shit, and tarot cards. The 70s were obsessed with spiritual mumbo-jumbo. This movie also has a large black cast of actors, which is really interesting. It makes it the blackest James Bond movie.
And don't worry, the show still has white people.
There's plenty of times in this movie where James Bond is called a honky.
My name is
James is for tombstones, baby. You all take this honky out and waste him, now!
The main bad guy is played by Yaphet Kotto, which I hope I'm saying his name right. He's pretty great in this movie. He actually plays a pretty awesome villain. If you don't recognize him, he's the guy from Alien, who's talking about the bonus situation.
Before we dock, I think we ought to discuss the bonus situation. Right. Brett and I, we think we deserve full shares, right?
There's a lot of action sequences in this movie, and some of them feel very over the top. There's 3 chase sequences in this movie, which is crazy. And the huge one is the boat chase scene, which is like 15 minutes long. It's crazy. There's so much going on in it. The whole scene is James Bond trying to get away from some evil henchmen in a boat. And then you also get to see like the police side of the boat chase, where they introduce this like really weird sheriff character who has way too much dip in his mouth.
Nobody cuts and runs on Sheriff J.W. Pepper.
And every time he's on screen, I can't decide whether I like him or I think he's really fucking annoying.
Sort of secret agent. Secret agent?
And that whole boat chase scene is just filled with like non-stop gags. There's like a part where the sheriff gets his stepbrother Billy Bob to get into his really fast boat.
You call my brother-in-law Billy Bob, he's got the fastest boat in the whole damn river. Billy Bob sure enough fix the ass. Ah.
Well, then one of the bad guy henchmen hijacks the boat, and then when the boat is going down the river, like the sheriff is like, yeah, that's my brother.
That's my brother-in-law. That's Billy Bob. Hot damn! If one side of that family don't get him, the other side will.
And it's like, oh, sheriff, your brother is in black. And then, like, there's a scene where they crash into a wedding, and then, like, there's a random, like, old guy driving an oyster truck for no reason. This movie's actually pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie. And then near the end, it gets really fucking weird with, like, this whole voodoo scene.
What the fuck's going on?
And I guess I should talk about Roger Moore and his James Bond. It's kind of weird because, like, no one really talks about Roger Moore's James Bond. He's kind of like the forgotten one out of the bunch, even though he has just as many movies as Sean Connery did. But I was kind of worried about Roger Moore before watching his movies just because, like, in the promotional material, he looks kind of old. I'm pretty sure Sean Connery and George Lazenby were, like, models before they were James Bond. So I feel like James Bond should be a handsome, spry young fellow. But for the most part, Roger Moore does a good job. I feel like he does encapsulate the character pretty well, though it doesn't feel natural yet. I feel like as his movies go on, he'll fit more into the character. And he'll make it his bitch, you know. And then when it comes to the soundtrack, of course, the main theme of this movie is pretty iconic, I guess. To be honest, I don't really like it. I don't think it fits with Bond. I feel like a Bond theme should be kind of elegant and classy. This one just feels like a soft rock song from the 70s. It's a decent song, I guess, but I don't like Paul McCartney, and I don't like the Beatles. I will say, though, the soundtrack that accompanies it is pretty good. It relies a lot on drums, which I think adds a lot to the movie. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one. You know, there's a lot of shit going on in it. It's a bit goofy, it's a bit jumbled and all over the place. The ending in particular is pretty nuts. The way James Bond defeats the bad guy is really over the top. I'm not going to show it because I feel like it's something that you need to witness yourself. Overall, though, this is a pretty enjoyable James Bond movie. It's pretty solid, and I would say it's a very fun watch.
Such a delicate touch.
Sheer magnetism, darling.
I'd give this movie a 7 out of 10. I'm very excited to continue the Roger Moore James Bond movies. I wonder where they'll go from here.
Same time tomorrow, Mrs. Bell?
Okay, it's time for the last movie I watched in March.
All right, everyone, if you're ready, it's time to have some grave encounters.
Grave Encounters is a found footage movie. And in my opinion, I think the found footage genre is one of the most underrated genres out there. I actually like found footage movies. And I think there's still a lot of untapped potential in the genre. I think having the camera involved in the story does a really good job at immersing you into the movie. And there's tons of examples of it working out fantastically. The Blair Witch Project, Cloverfield, Wreck, Chronicle, hell, even Cannibal Holocaust. There's a lot of really great found footage movies out there, but I guess there's also a lot of bad ones. Nowadays, found footage movies are seen as trashy, cheap, and gimmicky. But I really don't think they have to be that way. I think the found footage genre needs a little bit of a resurgence. Now, Grave Encounters, I would say, is trashy, cheap, and gimmicky. But I actually like this movie just because I have some personal attachment with it. I feel like this was the first horror movie that I watched that I actually kind of liked. Yes, believe it or not, I used to not like horror movies. When I was really young, I used to hate them because they would scare me. And I think it's all because when I was young, I went to a babysitter's house. And this babysitter, she babysat a bunch of different kids in her house. She had like bunk beds set up for them and shit. And I was at her house, and one night, before we went to sleep, she said that she was going to let us watch 2 movies before bedtime. The first one would be a movie that she would pick out, and the second one was a movie that us kids picked out. The kids, we picked out Finding Nemo, which is easily the best Pixar movie. Well, she picked out a fucking horror movie. And I remember like even asking the babysitter if we could watch Finding Nemo first. And she told me, you know, we could either watch both of these movies and do the horror movie first, or you can go to bed right now. And I was not sleepy, so I was like, I guess I'll watch your horror movie, babysitter. And for the longest time, I thought it was Rest Stop, which is a fucking awful movie. But I rewatched it like years ago, and it wasn't the movie that I remembered when I was young. What I remembered from this horror movie that this babysitter picked out was it was about a woman who gets dropped off by her boyfriend at like a bathroom, like a random bathroom in the middle of nowhere. And then when she goes into it, the bathroom is like pure white. It's like the brightest white in the world. It's so bright. And she goes into one of the stalls, and while she's in there, a skinless man comes in and starts harassing her. And I remember a lot of like vivid imagery from this. I remember how bright red he was compared to like the bright white background. I remembered a shot of his eye looking through the crack of the bathroom stall. And I also remembered a police officer coming in and his head getting exploded by a shotgun. And then at the very end of the movie, the girl gets out and she's like looking around for her boyfriend and he's not there. And then randomly she wakes up and it's revealed that the whole movie was a dream.
What? What the hell does that leave us with then?
What I'm trying to say is that I watched a horror movie when I was like 5 or 6 that scared me so bad that I imagined a much scarier movie. Unless the movie that I just described does exist. If I can't find this movie, or if it doesn't exist, then I'll fucking make the movie myself, goddammit. I remember it vividly enough to like make my own version of what I remember. Maybe I could do it one day. Just maybe. Anyway, years later, Grave Encounters was playing on my TV, and it was daytime, so I wasn't that afraid to watch it. I was like 12 or 13 or something, and while watching it, I was actually pretty engaged with the movie. I kind of liked it, even though it still kind of scared me a little bit, and I would say this was the first movie that kind of eased me into like loving horror movies. Without this movie, Grave Encounters, I would have been a completely different person. Anyway, let's talk about the movie.
If you're ready, it's time to have some grave encounters.
This movie is all about a group of paranormal investigators who are trying to film their own ghost hunting show. They're on their 6th episode and they decide to stay the night at a mental asylum. But as they do, they find out that it's haunted.
There's ghosts in here.
And this movie is a lot of fun. Obviously, now that I'm older and I'm rewatching it, it's not as scary as I remember. To be honest with you, this movie isn't scary at all to me. It relies too much on jump scares, and there's also like a lot of really shitty editing and like cheap CGI faces that are very reminiscent of like old scary videos you would find on YouTube randomly. I would actually say this movie is way more funny than scary. This time around while watching it, I was actually laughing for the majority of it. And to be fair, I actually think the movie knows what it's doing when it comes to its comedy, because the first like 30 minutes of this movie is pretty hilarious.
It's really hard to put your finger on it, but I get the sense that I'm not alone.
Let's go check it out.
Okay.
Obviously, it's trying to make fun of ghost hunting shows, so they kind of show like the behind the scenes of this group of people trying to put together a ghost hunting episode.
The ghost of the Collingwood Psychiatric Hospital. Cut.
Nice.
Yeah?
So they go around interviewing people, and they even bribe like a gardener into saying that he's seen scary stuff.
How about you make something up for the camera? Pretend you saw something. Just...
I gotta go to work.
Okay, real quick. Wait. No. Do we have any of the petty cash left? Hey, Javier, that was $20, Sam.
There's a lot of really funny stuff involving like the process of like filmmaking and getting into character and all of that stuff.
I'm Lance Preston. One more time?
No, we don't.
One more time. For Grave Encounters.
Which is something that I really like, you know, because as someone who has made their own videos where you kind of have to get into character or whatever, it makes a lot of it feel really relatable. This is one of those movies that kind of inspire me to want to like go out and make my own found footage movie. And the characters are pretty fun also. They have this actor guy come in and act like he's like speaking to spirits and shit.
Our spirit is still with us.
Cut it. Yeah. That was great.
Okay, was that too much?
No.
Come on.
No,
Guys.
no, that was great. That sounded...
And the main character, I think, really carries this movie. His performance is very good. All of the scenes where he snaps in and out of character is pretty hilarious. This movie kind of puts you into the crew of these ghost hunters, and it's kind of fun. And then when the ghost stuff actually does happen, this movie does not stop. The pacing of this movie is really good. It never stops, you know, escalating events. Obviously, it starts kind of comedic with them kind of hamming it up and everything.
Very negative, dark energy down here. And not just a single energy, a lot of energy. Many spirits.
And then when ghost stuff happens, they're amused but not scared.
TC, you're with me, man. Come on. Yeah, are you kidding me? Did you see that shit?
And then when shit gets really real, they start freaking the fuck out.
Electrical anomaly.
It's fucking retarded! Why'd you come up with, if you're gonna fucking come up with an idea, come up with something rational. This is one of your fucking auditions for some science fiction movie.
There's nothing else that's rational here, okay? It's as rational as anything else.
And I love movies about a group of characters who are in a situation where they start going crazy. And it's awesome, you know, like they're trapped in this like maze of a mental asylum and they can't get out. And like I said, this movie isn't really scary, it's more so just entertaining, if anything. And the best way I can describe it is that it feels like a perfect representation of going into one of those haunted attractions. Like a haunted house or like a haunted like forest that's run by a group of people who dress up in like scary costumes and jump out at you. That's what this movie feels like. And I really like it, you know, I like the characters, I like how the story never lets up and keeps the momentum, and I really like the balance of like comedy and horror in it. It makes my dick hard.
It's fucking solid.
But obviously, you know, this movie also falls into the traps of, you know, found footage-isms, you know, the reasons why people don't like found footage movies. You know, one thing that always pisses me off in found footage movies is when they add a bunch of unnecessary, like, glitch effects. And there's a lot of that in this movie that's kind of annoying. It's a very cheesy movie, like, overall. It's very cheesy. It's like a cheesy found footage movie from the early 2010s. And I feel like it's a perfect representation of, like, horror during that period of time. I would recommend this movie. I really would. I would say it's perfect when you're in a group of friends and you guys want to watch like a cheesy horror movie. Put it on, you know, get some alcohol, take a drink every single time one of the characters says Matt.
Matt!
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 Matt! Hey, Matt! Matt!
Matt!
Matt!
Matt!
Matt!
Matt, where are you, Matt? Matt, come on. Matt! Where the fuck you at? Matt?
Matt!
Where's
Matt! 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 Matt, you in here? Matt! He's not in here. He's not in here.
I still haven't been able to find Matt.
Matt! 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 Shit!
We have to find him.
Matt! 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 Hey, Matt!
Matt!
Matt! Hey, Matt!
Matt!
Matt! Matt!
Matt!
Guys, this is fucking pointless, alright?
That was Matt! That was Matt!
Matt!
We're trying Matt on the radio.
Yeah, enough's enough!
We still can't find Matt.
I'm just documenting stuff, okay? People are gonna want to see this.
Matt.
Matt?
That's him, right?
Matt!
Matt.
Matt! Matt! Hey, Matt! Matt, are you okay?
Matt. Matt.
Matt. Matt. We found Matt.
Everything's gonna be okay.
And I guess, you know, I would give it a 7 out of 10.
Where are you?
What the hell is that? Wait, what is that?
What the fuck was that?
And that is all the movies I watched in March. A very weird month for movies. Honestly, a lot of these movies were just like, they were good, they were fine, you know? And there was only like a few standouts. A little disappointing, honestly, you know? I'm sorry. But hey, there's always next month. I actually already know what I watched in April, and let me tell you, it's nothing but bangers. But March, it's over. It's done with. And if you're still watching up to this point, then
Get out of here!